Hello, my geometry class. So this is going to be the very first time that you are viewing one of the videos for our notes. It's a little bit different than what you've seen previously probably in your math classes, where I'm not physically standing at the board right now. But you're still going to be taking notes as if I was standing at the board. So this is exactly what you're going to be doing at home, and we're going to be practicing this together on the first day of school. So that way you get an idea of what it is exactly that I'm looking for. So you should have the notes already printed out right in front of you every single time that you come to watch these videos, and you're going to be filling them out and writing down the exact same things that I have on the board. Now, when you're sitting at home and you're watching this, you're not going to be able to ask me questions right away like you would normally during class. However, I do want you to write down the questions that you do have in the margins of your notes. Okay, I need you to write those questions down so that way in the next day when I see you in class, we're going to quickly go over the notes like a review kind of a thing, or I might give you a little pop quiz on the notes, and you will need to ask me any questions that you had while you were watching the notes. And I know for me, I'm not very good at remembering my questions a full day later, so you need to have them written down on the sides of your notes. So we are going to start up the notes right now, and like I said, you should have your notes in front of you, you should have a pencil in front of you, and you should be taking notes while I'm taking notes. Whenever you get to a point within the video that you need to pause the video and write something down, or you need to re-watch a certain part, I recommend that you do that. You should be hitting the pause button frequently when you're watching these videos. You should be hitting the rewind button several times when you're watching these videos. If ever I'm doing anything that you didn't fully understand, or you need a little bit more time to comprehend it, hit the pause, hit the rewind button. That's the beauty of having the video, that you can rewatch these as often as you need to. Alright, so here we go. Points. Points are represented by dots and are named with uppercase letters. So we all know what a dot is, or what a point is. It's basically just a dot. It's an infinitely small thing, and we're going to label these next points using the letters A, B, C, D, and E. Notice how all of those need to be capitalized. Every single time you want to name a point, you need to use a capital letter to denote that point. And you really should be naming them, otherwise I'm going to have some trouble when I want to say that point on the, let's see here, the second one from the left on the upper side. Like, that's really hard for me to be able to do continually, so that's why we're giving them names, so that way when I say point B, you know exactly which point it is that I'm referring to. Lines. Lines are made up of at least 2 points and are straight. Lines extend infinitely far in both directions. To show this, arrows are on both ends of a line. Lines can be named by any 2 points on it or by a single letter. So for example, here's 2 examples of lines. There's actually infinitely many points located on this particular line. And we can call this, you see how it has that little cursive L, or that cursive W right next to it? You can name it by that particular letter. Okay, so we can call this line, and that is supposed to be a cursive W. How do you do a cursive W? I don't even know, but that's the best shot I've got. So lowercase cursive letters are what we use to name lines, or at least that's one way to name a line. This other one, if you notice the line to the right of that, it doesn't have any lowercase letters next to it. So we need to call this by the points that are located on the line. Now there's more than just these 3 points on the line. There's actually infinitely many points on the line. We just have 3 of them lettered. How do I know that? Because you can see the points on the 3 points, and they've got a capital single letter next to each of them. Those are each of those points' names. Point Q, point R, point S. So in this particular example, the way that I could name this line is with any 2 points on the line. So for example, I could name this line QR, and then draw a line over the top of that. Okay, don't just put QR and forego that line on the top of it. If you just write QR, then that really means point Q and point R. Don't get lazy and write QR and put a little dash over the top of it. That means something entirely different. You do need the arrows to indicate that this is a line that goes through Q and it goes through R in both directions infinitely long. You don't have to call it Q and then R. You could name this R and then Q and also put a line segment or a line over it just by flipping the letters. It doesn't matter which 2 points that you pick, because if you go on infinitely long through any 2 of these letters, then that's the exact same line. So if I could call this like line RS, I could call this line SR, and I want to see if you can't come up with the other 2 ways to name the line. So this would be the point where you would pause the video and you would actually fill in those other 2. So I'll give you a moment to do that. Moving onward, line segments. Line segments are similar to lines in that they are also made up of points and are straight. Line segments differ from lines in that they have a definite beginning and end. They are named by their 2 endpoints. So, for example, here, name all the names for this line segment. This is different than a line. A line goes on forever in both directions. If you notice in this one, it doesn't have arrows on it. It looks like it starts at X and it has a definite end at Y, and it's just that piece between them, all those points in between X and Y that are connected. That is a line segment. If it went on forever in both directions, which it doesn't, then it would be a line. But this is not a line, it's a line segment. So 2 ways I could name this line segment. Line segment XY. Notice I did not put the arrows on it. See, that's what I was saying before. When you're naming lines, you've got to put the arrows on the top of it, otherwise it means line segment. Or I could switch around the letters and call that line segment YX. This next one, how would you name this? Well, this is not line segment EFG. Please do not put line segment EFG. It is not line segment EFG. A line segment needs to be all on the same line or on the same line segment. This is really 2. Okay, this is not straight. That's 1, and then there's another one over here. That's not one single line segment. You have line segment EF or FE if you prefer over there, and this one you have a different line segment FG or GF over there. You don't need to have 3 letters to be able to name a line segment. So back up to this previous one. Don't name this line segment QRS. Just pick 2 of the letters. That's all that you really need to make a line. If you throw in a 3rd one or more, then it's kind of redundant. I think we're on the next page here. We sure are. So rays. Rays are, oops, I think I did something funny. Whoopsie. Okay, rays are also made up of points and are straight, but they are different from lines and segments because it begins in an endpoint and then extends infinitely far in only one direction. So it's kind of like a line, and it's kind of like in segments where it has just a start, like a segment has a start, but then it only goes on forever in one single direction. A line would go on forever in 2 directions. To name a ray, always name the end point first. Always name the end point first so that it is clear where the ray begins. So for example here, list this particular ray in all the ways that you or this ray in as many ways as you can. So notice how this one's got an arrow going this direction. It looks like it starts at C and goes on forever in that direction. So the way we would name this ray is ray CT. You start with the end point, it starts at C, and where does it continually go through? It continually goes through point C. Now, a different way you could name this is you could also call this ray C going through A. Now, notice how when I write C and then A, C is again still that starting point, and if I continually go through A, it doesn't end at A, it keeps on going forever through A. That's why we're putting the arrow on that. So that's the exact same thing as ray CT. Now, what I couldn't call this is I could not call this ray AT. The problem with calling this ray AT is that would actually be starting at A and going all the way through T. That's not the exact same rate as the original picture. That's got a different end point, so that's why you can't call it that one. You also cannot switch the order, like T, if I do ray TC, that's also not going to work. That's not the same thing. Starting at T going all the way through C is a completely different ray and going in the opposite direction than what we had to start with. And I erased my little arrow here on accident. This next one, I want you guys to name that ray in all the possible ways that you can. So go ahead and do that. Angles. Angles can be named by its are formed by two rays that have the same endpoint. This endpoint is called the vertex of the angle, and the rays are called the sides. Angles can be named by its vertex, by a symbol given inside the angle, or by 3 points of the able. Let's see here, or of 3 points on the angle. I think that's what that's supposed to say. Let's see here. Angles can be named by its vertex by a symbol given inside the angle, or by 3 of the points of the angle is what that's supposed to say. So you guys can correct that if it's not already corrected on your paper. As long as the middle point is the vertex. So for example here, like I can call this angle BAC. Now I need 3 letters here to be able to name an angle, and it does have a specific order that it has to be named. If I start at B, and then I go to A, and then I go to C, and then I have my my rays there, that's an angle. So, and the way that you symbolize an angle is you draw a little angle symbol. Okay, looks like an L. That's it kind of looks like the letter L. Now, what I do is I get my angles confused with the letter L because mine start getting a little bit sloppy. So I tend to put a little bit of a little marking in there to indicate angle. Now, you don't have to, but I would recommend it because it does get kind of confusing after a while. Now, you'll see that I tend to get a little bit sloppy, and my angle no longer looks really pretty like that after a while, but instead I start making my angles look like this. That's also angle. That's just me being sloppy writing the symbol angle, but that's what that means. You do need to have that symbol in front. So you call this angle BAC. You could switch the order of this and call this angle CAB. But notice how this middle letter both times is a vertex. That has to be true. That middle letter has to be the vertex. And what's kind of nice is sometimes if you actually read the letters and kind of trace it out in the order that it's saying, C and then A and then B. Oh, that's referring to that angle right there is what it must be. Now this one is kind of special, and I could also call this with just a single letter, and I could call this one angle A if I would like to. The only reason I can call this one angle A is because there's no other angle A around. There's only one single angle that has this as the vertex of the angle. That's angle A right there. The next one though, like this one, if I want to name this particular angle, there's several different ways I could name that angle. I could call that angle L, M, R. Notice how M is the vertex of that angle, so it's got to be the middle letter. You could switch the order of that and call that angle R, M, L, where M again is the vertex angle. And this one, notice how it's got a nice number 1 right there. That's not to say it's 1 degree. It's a quick way of being able to name that angle. It's angle 1 is another way you could name that angle. The whole angle here, there's not a whole lot of ways that I could name that entire angle. In this particular case, I could call that angle LMQ is one way I could name that. I could call that angle QML. Notice how M, again, is the vertex of that angle, so that's got to be the middle letter. Could I call this one angle M in this case? No, you could not, because there's actually 3 angles that have that exact same angle M, or that same point M as the vertex of the angle.